Okay, Sam, can you introduce yourself to us, to Korea Daily readers and our YouTube viewers?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Sam Yebri. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm a candidate for Los Angeles City Council to represent the 5th District.
Mm-hmm. Why did you run for this race?
Yeah, so it starts with my family story, which is probably similar to many Korean Americans. My parents and I moved to Los Angeles when I was a year old as refugees from Iran. My mom holding me, my dad holding 2 suitcases. I went to local public schools in the 5th District, then went to Yale and USC for law school. And I came back and started a business, my own law firm, and that's a perspective that's missing. There's not a single business owner who's running in this race or actually on the city council right now. And I'm proud of my work in the community on numerous nonprofit boards. But as my wife and I and our 4 young kids watched over the last 2 years, we've seen the city that we love decline, an explosion of homelessness and crime and corruption, and we actually thought about leaving Los Angeles. And we decided we're not going to give up on the city that we love, the city that enabled us to live the American dream. We're going to fight to turn it around to make sure Los Angeles is safe for every family.
When did you have those conversations about leaving LA? Actually, many people have probably considered that recently.
Yeah, the middle of the pandemic, around the time of the racial protests, George Floyd, and you saw people really suffering on our streets, explosion of homelessness, and the city just being unable to solve problems. Public safety and homelessness being the biggest issues, and then you see this orientation towards businesses taking them for granted, and my community, and I think the Korean American community too, really values entrepreneurship and starting and contributing in the business sector, and that's just, Los Angeles is such a difficult place to operate a business, and that needs to change. Otherwise, more and more people who will leave Los Angeles.
So what's your solution for, like you said, homelessness and also crime?
Sure. First, crime. First, the minimum is we need more police officers. We used to have 10,000 police officers. When I served our city as a city commissioner under Mayor Villaraigosa, we're down to 9,300. So we have to increase our police officers. We have to make sure they're focused on core police work. Let's get them out of things that are not their responsibility, like mental health calls or some crowd control. Let them deal with the guns and the gangs that they're willing to put their lives on the line for us. And we need to make sure there's consequences for crime. We need to make sure communities are working closely with law enforcement. Cash bail and Prop 47 have had unintended consequences. We have to get that right. Guns are exploding on our streets. We have to enforce our gun laws and go further where we can, especially with ghost guns, illegal guns. And we have this part of town is going to have 7 new subway stations from La Brea all the way west to the VA, and we have to keep it clean and safe for people to actually take it. On homelessness, we know what we have to do for folks who are homeless because of economic reasons: build more affordable housing, help tenants, make Section 8 available to more people. But for the other half plus of the population with mental health and addiction issues, we're doing nothing. We're allowing people with these issues to live in our parks and suffer and die. Now more than 5 every single day, the majority of whom are ODing from drugs. We have to use every tool available, including anti-camping ordinances, to transition people into shelters and create more mental health beds, more mental health hospitals. In the 5th District, UCLA Health is doing this work. They're building a mental health facility, a psych hospital, at Olympic near Fairfax, Olympia Medical Center. And the city has to come in and make that a lot easier to do. And that's really a priority for me, is more mental health and resources, and addiction resources, and keep our neighborhoods safe as well.
Do you think LA is too lenient about those drug issues like fentanyl?
Yeah, so I've gone to every fire station in the 5th District, and what they tell me is half of all the phone calls they get every day involve a firefighter and a paramedic sticking a Narcan nasal spray and someone knows who's about to OD from drugs. So we're being lenient in the sense that we're not enforcing drug laws, but more importantly, we're allowing people to live and suffer on our streets thinking it's progressive or thinking that it's humane. That's not. I think what's most progressive, what's most humane is to get people into treatment faster. Yeah. We have to change our mental health laws. Right now, the state of California says that unless you're an imminent threat to yourself or someone else, or gravely disabled, you can't be conserved. You can't be forced to get the help you need. And that's why people are dying. That's why they're falling into ER beds and jail beds, because the laws don't work, and we're not allowing social workers and mental health professionals to transition people into care faster.
For the current law, you can't arrest them, right? Whether they use fentanyl or meth, right? Only the sellers, right? But the users, they pretty much just let them be.
Well, we don't really enforce our laws. Police officers are generally overworked and focusing on other duties. I think that the drugs that are on the streets right now are so dangerous, 10 times more
Yeah,
dangerous
that's what I heard.
from what they were a generation ago. And I think we have to do everything we can to stop the drug trade in and use of these hardcore drugs, not marijuana, but actually the fentanyl, the meth, the opioids that we see, the heroin. It's destroying people, it's destroying neighborhoods and communities. And I think it has to be a real priority for the next council member, for the next city attorney, mayor, police chief. We're going to have a whole new batch of people, and it's important to elect the right people who are going to tackle this issue head on.
Okay. How many numbers do you want to increase the LAPD force?
Yeah, so we used to have...
Right now it's 9,300. Right?
Yeah, at least 10,000. That's what we had under Mayor Villaraigosa at its height. The challenge is we can't even recruit enough police officers because they're leaving the force in such high numbers. They're retiring early or going to other departments or other police departments in other cities because they're treated better. So we have to stop demonizing police officers. We have to stop asking them to be the first response to everything. 140,000 phone calls a year to LAPD related to homelessness alone. No wonder it takes an hour for a police officer to get to a break-in because they're overwhelmed. So 10,000 is the minimum. We budgeted 9,700. So we have to make sure the personnel department works faster and has the staffing available to recruit and hire more. And then we got to focus them on the core issues, guns and gangs, which are terrorizing communities.
How would you like to solve the homelessness issue?
Yeah, so affordable housing and help low-income tenants on one side. The other side is enforcing anti-camping ordinances to get people who are homeless into the mental health care, into the shelters faster. We need to shift money from building brand new construction. It is insane to spend $837,000 to build one unit of homeless housing and take 6 years to do it, and that's what the city's doing. We can't build our way out of homelessness. We need customized, personalized responses. This means homeless shelters that are very cost effective, that are unique to a population. If the majority of the people in their 20s who are homeless are foster youth who aged out of the system. The majority of the women on the streets are survivors of domestic violence. We need shelters unique to those. We can do it very cost effectively. We can do it faster. The city and the county own a lot of land, 7,500 parcels, including over 30 acres by LAX that could be used as emergency shelter. There's other properties as well. We can't build ground up construction for homeless housing. It's just not a good use of resources. We'll never solve the problem that way. We have to be much more urgent and cost effective.
Right. Are you supportive of recalling George Gascon?
So I didn't vote for George Gascon, I voted for Lacey. Although some of his ideas made sense at the time, like alternatives to incarceration, not everyone who commits a crime should be arrested. He's gone too far. I think not enforcing hate crime enhancements we've seen against the Jewish community, against the Asian American community, not enforcing gang and gun enhancements have unintended consequences, or minors who are 17 and committing violent crime. So I think he's made us less safe, and if he was on the ballot today, I would not be voting for him. But I'm not going to take a position on the recall. I think recalls are oftentimes wasteful, but I think he's made us less safe, and I don't support many of his policies.
Your opponents in CD5, are they supportive of defunding the police or abolishing the police? Because I see these candidates still saying these things.
Yeah, so I have 3 other candidates. 2 of them went to a forum and raised their hands and pledged never to hire any more police officers.
You said how many candidates altogether?
There's 3 other candidates.
3 other, and then 2 of them.
2 of them raised their hands saying we'll never hire another police officer, and the third one, when asked about the police officers, said that she would doesn't know how many police officers we need. She wants to do an audit. I know exactly what we need. We need more. Mm-hmm. So that's a distinction.
You're facing against some dangerous candidates, huh?
I think our city is at a crossroads, and we can't allow people who are going to play politics with our public safety. They're going to put ideology over the safety of our kids.
Do you think CD5 is a progressive place, or do you think it's more moderate, in your opinion?
Look, I think that term progressive has changed. I'm very socially liberal.
I'm talking about ultra left, because I think that's a term that a lot of moderates have been using.
Yeah, I'm not ultra left. I'm not a defund the police person. I want to improve policing. I want more policing in the right way. I'm socially liberal on a lot of issues. I think most folks in the 5th District are. But I'm also a business owner. I'm a dad of 4 young kids. I'm an immigrant. All those perspectives inform who I am. And I think right now we need new approaches. We've tried allowing people to live in parks and suffer and die in record numbers. We've tried reducing the number of police officers, and we've seen the results. And we need people from the outside who are going to say, look, it's not working, and we need some common sense. And that's the term I use most often is a practical, common sense approach to government, not ideological. I'm not beholden to anyone in government. I've never worked in government before, other than for a judge and for a Congress member and as a commissioner, but I don't owe anything to anyone. I've still earned the support of the firefighters of Los Angeles, the business community, building trades, because all these folks are invested and want a better Los Angeles.
Do you think that we should persuade those ultra left people that their idea is not working, or do you think we don't have time for that and we just have to go on with what we need to do? No time to persuade those people, because there's a lot of those people too.
Look,
like,
I
ultra
think,
left.
I think when we talk about homelessness, we often talk about different populations. The activist, more progressive types talk about the people who are homeless because of economic reasons and focus on that population and say, look, we need to do more for rent subsidies and or provide counsel for people who are low-income tenants. And I support a lot of those ideas, right? But what they don't often talk about is the public safety harm that the homeless population poses to themselves and to their neighbors. The encampment fires that are happening in record numbers. If you ask the firefighters, it's not. I'll talk to everyone.
It happens all the time. The fire.
Yeah,
I get a lot of calls
almost half of the calls to the fire department involve some homelessness related issues. So I think this is about new approaches, and some of them are some progressive ideas. I think getting police out of mental health calls is an issue championed by progressives, but it's an issue that police officers agree that they're trained, they're well equipped to deal with violent crime, and that's something that only a police officer with a gun can do. No other city employee will run and deal with an active shooter. No other city employee can deal with our kids being in danger. But if someone is having is ODing from fentanyl, having a psychotic episode, and that's not necessarily violent or dangerous, there could be social workers, it could be mental health professionals, and frankly, that could be better use of our dollars too. So we can do both. But it's coming in with an open mind and listening. And small businesses, right? Every day small businesses in the city are suffering. The city needs to realize that that's the engine of our economy, right? And it's the backbone of every neighborhood, right? If the local restaurant that's beloved, the local shop disappears, there's going to be blight in the whole community, and it's that broken windows theory. Things will get worse for everyone. But if we help that small business to survive, maybe even grow and thrive, and new businesses come in, and we see that all throughout the 5th District. For example, in Westwood Village, half of the storefronts are empty. There's a 42% commercial vacancy rate. Near UCLA and Bel Air and Westwood, because there's been restrictive rules and the city's not been proactive in helping businesses survive the pandemic. And
this was happening even before the pandemic?
It was there's a specific plan, there's restrictive rules. It's very difficult to do business in Los Angeles. It's difficult to build housing in Los Angeles. We need housing, obviously. And but there's a chance to really change that.
So you need a collective voice in the city council. You're pro-business, right?
Absolutely.
Deregulation.
I'm absolutely pro-business. I'm a business owner myself. The Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce has endorsed me. BizFed, California Restaurant Association, CCA, which represents downtown. Every business group that's endorsed anyone in this race has endorsed me, because I realize that we can balance employer, employee, landlord, tenant, and get to the right result. And that balance is not happening right now. And I know what it means to have to meet your payroll and workers' comp and business tax. And that's how we come out of the pandemic stronger, is to empower businesses to grow and to hire and make it easier, right? With outdoor dining or signage rules, or helping make it easier to build, especially affordable housing or workforce housing, right? That we don't have enough of. It's time to unlock the power of the private sector and work with the private sector.
When did you announce your candidacy?
September 8th, 2020.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
wow.
21 months ago.
So when you knocked on doors,
Been knocking on doors, almost on every door in the district. Yeah.
What are the biggest complaints that they have, other than homelessness and crime issues?
Homelessness and crime are the biggest issues, and depending where they are, there could be very local issues. I was knocking on doors at Olympic and Overland. If you remember Monique Munoz, who was driving, and some kid in a Lamborghini drove 100 miles an hour and killed her. These people were complaining for months, if not years, that Olympic on the west side has become a freeway and we have to slow it down, and the city council did nothing. And ultimately this woman died, and they're starting to do things now with some lights. And
always something has to happen.
Right. In some parts of the district, there are oil and gas wells. There are more oil and gas wells in this part of Los Angeles than any other district. and they're not being inspected. They're not being monitored. They're not being plugged if they're inactive or idle wells. There's overdevelopment in the hillsides. People are building massive houses without permits and asking for forgiveness instead of permission. Or street vending is taking over entire blocks of parts of Melrose. Homelessness and crime are issues, but the other big issue is we're not enforcing our city rules.
Yeah.
People are getting away with whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's harming the taxpayer, the people who are following the rules, and the business owners. And that needs to change. We need a council member, and the city attorney, and a mayor who's going to enforce our city's rules.
Yeah, and the City Hall had been involved in a lot of corruption issues with MRT being charged with 20
Yes.
counts of federal crime, and also Mitchell Englander.
Mhm.
He was charged, and I think he admitted guilt.
Yes,
he served jail time.
He served.
And also, you have another one, Jose Huizar.
Yes, sir.
And and many people think the corruption is probably the root cause of all this homelessness and chaos that's happening in Los Angeles. People leaving here in droves. How would you solve that problem?
So it's a great point. So 3 of the 15 people that we've hired, I use the verb hired instead of elected because this is a job. And instead of doing their job, they're busy enriching themselves or their family members, right? 3 of these 15 are in or near or have faced federal prison. And the type of bribes they've accepted are shocking. Gold bars, Vegas trips, prostitutes, right? And instead of doing the hard work of solving homelessness or helping small businesses or keeping neighborhoods safe, this is what they're doing, right? So the first policy paper I've issued policy papers on all the big issues, homelessness and crime and housing and climate. The first one was on government reform. We need campaign finance reform. That's on not taking money from any special interests, no PACs, no developers, no fossil fuel, no union money, just individuals. And we've still raised more money than anyone else running for city council, including the incumbents. We need ethics reform. We can't have this weak ethics commission in charge of our city ethics rules. It took the federal government wiretapping
it was
the
like,
FBI to catch these 3
exactly.
criminals.
Ethics commission is just there for
There's no subpoena power. There's no robust budget. There's not enough staff. And they're appointed by the mayor and the city council,
Exactly. So
and are supposed to
beholden.
oversee
Yeah.
the mayor and the city council. We need and then we need planning reform. We need more of projects to be by right and as opposed to discretionary. You can't allow a council member to have so much power to approve projects that don't make sense, and we know it's going to invite corruption. These decisions need to be made at the community council, community plan level, as opposed to with lobbyists in back rooms. Redistricting, another form of corruption in the city. We've seen the Korean American community suffer because of it, and the community being carved up. But it needs to be truly independent. You can't have redistricting commissioners appointed by the city council and then have the city council have the ability to just throw it out. That makes no sense. Charter reform, the councils or districts are just too big to have someone who's
you want more districts.
I do. We need at least 30. New York and Chicago have over 51 and 50 respectively. The city has only 15, and we have the same number they've had for a century. Our population went from 1 million to over 4 million in that 100 years, and we have the same number. It's virtually, in my mind, impossible, if not impractical, for the same person to represent Bel Air and Koreatown and Palms. These are very different communities, and they're very different parts of town. Same thing in the Valley and the West Side districts that used to go over the hill. And then we need some real charter reform. And that includes redistricting, includes the district size. I think there's some conflict of interest rules related to corruption that don't make sense. And I put that on a 6-point plan on my website. All my plans are at sanforla.com.
The city council, which lobby has the most power? Most influence in city council? Do you happen to know that? Is it like do some candidates get fossil fuel money too? I'm not aware.
Some. It's the biggest are developers and their lobbyists, because there's so much money at stake. You can move from something's entitled or zoned
so that's
for.
Why Jose Huizar got a lot of money.
If something is zoned for 4 stories, but your council member will let you, with his or her permission, it can be zoned for 40, right? Yeah. That's millions or billions of dollars of a windfall, right? And if not corruption, it's so much money spent on lobbying, and we need to change that system. So that's a big one. And there's a lot of groups that are
pharmaceutical companies also have some influence. No, not
generally. No,
Hollywood,
if you think
not Hollywood money, right?
No, it's public sector unions have a big, powerful voice because they have many employees. The business community generally has a big voice on some issues, but it's fine to have a voice and it's fine to have your perspectives. It has to be all transparent. Everyone needs to be heard, but it can't be done illegally. It can't be done through favors, through corruption, through bribes. Let's sit around the table. Let's have full transparency of what people want, and let's come up with better ideas. Professionally, I'm a litigator, so I represent clients, and I go to war to trial for them. But I'm also a mediator, so I do that as well. I bring people who are at odds and find shared interests and common values and get to better deals and settlements. That's what we need. Is some really good deal making on the city council where we get better resolutions. For example, the eviction moratorium, right? It can't go on forever, right? We all admit that it was necessary when the pandemic happened. We didn't want people to become homeless because of the pandemic, but now we have to move forward, right? We have to work that out and lift the eviction moratorium to have that mom and pop landlords get the help that they need, low-income tenants get the help that they need. We want to avoid evictions. We want to avoid people becoming homeless. The money is at the state level. We have a $90+ billion surplus. Some of that money can come in to make everyone whole and keep people in their homes and really make this a win-win for everyone.
It doesn't feel like we have surplus, actually. We always say that we have surplus, but where's all the money going? We don't feel the benefit of it.
Yeah, you're right. We keep getting taxed, and there's more tax proposals.
They always try to increase. They don't even waive the gas tax when the gas price has been going up like this.
A good example is the city budget, which the population has roughly stayed the same the last decade. But when I served Miragosa, we had an $8.5 billion budget. Fast forward 10, 12 years, our budget's now 11.5. And no one will say we're getting better city services, right? Our streets are falling apart, our trees aren't getting trimmed. We don't have park rangers in our parks anymore. For the most part, we don't have library security anymore. Potholes are at historic worsts, and police officers are down to, and firefighters too. People don't realize we have the same number of fire stations and roughly the same number of firefighters and paramedics that we had in the 1980s.
Wow.
Right. And and we're not ready for the next emergency. We're not ready for wildfire season. We're not ready for the Olympics. Emergency preparedness is underfunded. It's not just police. It's the fire department as well. We have to do more to invest in our brave men and women who are going to keep us safe.
Under Villaraigosa, which department were you at?
I was on the Civil Service Commission for almost 4 years, and that oversees recruiting, training, and discipline of all city employees except for management and sworn police and fire. So 40,000 employees. We're now up to 50,000 employees. But I did that work, and for example, if a city employee is suspended for some kind of misconduct, our body would determine whether or not that person would go back to work.
Did you have any other government experience other than that?
I worked for a federal judge, and I worked for Congressman Henry Waxman, who's endorsed me.
And your specialty in your legal field is commercial law?
I'm a litigator, so I do employment law, business litigation, and real estate litigation. But primarily I do employment on the worker side.
Do you support police officers on campus?
So it's an LAUSD issue if you're talking about elementary school districts. I think when we learned we just saw what happened in Texas.
So many people say, hey, we need those police officers.
Yeah.
If there were, he just pretty much went inside with no restriction.
We absolutely know we need more precautions, whether it's metal detectors or mental health professionals for the students, stronger gun control. But in general, I think we need more police officers. So what LAPD can do is there's been this movement to defund LAUSD-PD and UCPD, and if that continues, I think LAPD needs to do more. Legally, I think we're limited to what we can do in terms of stepping onto campuses, but we can do more in and around neighborhoods. But I know that's, as a parent myself, I'm worried about that. And what we're seeing is the private schools are amping up their private security.
They are, and even teachers are, using their guns, and I don't know,
So we need to come to a common sense place.
The students seem to like it because they had they raised their hands. Do you want teachers to have it? And they all raised their hands. So I don't know.
But it's a big issue I think as parents on our minds. I have 4 young kids, so
you have 4 kids.
Four kids.
From what year to what?
From age 3 to 9.
3 to 9.
So they're little.
Daughters and sons.
2 girls, the older ones, and 2 boys, the younger ones.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about CEQA? Because I heard a lot of complaints from developers, that CEQA has been restricting all that housing, so they can't build a lot.
Yeah.
And because of the restrictions here.
Yeah. So CEQA is a state law. I think it was well intentioned to make sure there's environmental reviews and the public had a chance to weigh in on anything. But it's being abused by people who
Yeah.
want to stop housing, who want to stop
And
construction.
billionaires gets exemption, right? Sacramento Kings, when they made their stadium, I heard that they were exempted.
Yeah, so there are exemptions made for certain projects, right? The big stadiums.
To donors, I guess.
Right, so I think it's being abused. I hope Sacramento reevaluates it. I think there's still value in doing those environmental reviews. I think there's still value in having public hearings. The alternative is get rid of it. If the public can't weigh in on what's going to happen on their corner, that would be troubling. And not understanding what the consequences environmentally would be long term is probably too. So there's some, get back to this idea of common sense, streamlining, and that one is a state issue. But on the housing side, we can do more to make it easier to build housing, especially when we want more middle income housing. We need to put those projects to the front of the line. Let's create incentives for developers to build that type of housing, especially near transit. We have 7 subway stations that are coming, as I mentioned, and that's where housing should go, in those commercial transit corridors.
Because I feel like there should be enough supply to, bring down the prices for the properties and also rent.
Yeah, supply demand, right?
Yeah,
More supply of housing will have to bring down rents. Yeah.
How would you describe CD5? Is it an affluent place, or which cities are there?
Yeah.
Can you explain it to our viewers?
Sure. So geographically, it goes from the 405 on the west end, and the west side is also from Bel Air all the way down to Palms, and then it goes east. Includes UCLA and Westwood and Chevy Hills and Rancho, and then when you go east, Beverlywood, Pico Robertson, and then you get to Fairfax, Carthay, Melrose, Miracle Mile, Park La Brea.
It's pretty close to Koreatown.
Yeah, Wilshire Park. It just stops right at kind of at Wilton, Hancock Park, Wilshire Park, Brookside. So there's wonderful communities. I know there's a large Korean American community in Park La Brea, in Wilshire Park as well, and also throughout the district, knocking on doors. I meet many Korean Americans, professors near UCLA, and business owners throughout. And in terms of affluence, it's considered the first or the second most affluent district.
Is it the first most affluent, you say?
With CD11, which is the west side,
Okay.
it's considered one of the 2 most affluent. But it also has unique diversity. It's not just Korean American. It has a large. I'm Iranian American. Has the largest Iranian American community, almost 10% of the district.
Wow.
Little Ethiopia butts it as well. There are
Even in CD14, they have a lot of Iranian there, right?
Yeah. And then big populations of Iranians in the valley as well. And there's great pockets of Armenians and communities from across the country, very well educated. Every door I knock, there's a professional, there's an attorney or a doctor. There tends to be a lot of well-educated, engaged people in the community. So
when you said 42% of the businesses are out
in Westwood Village.
Westwood Village.
Westwood Village. So of all the businesses in Westwood Village, which is right next to UCLA, 2 out of 5 are empty,
Westwood
vacant.
is a place where there's
So I use that as an example. If you think there'd be an incredible place and thriving community, but it's not because of some really difficult rules from the city. But up in all around the district, from the Miracle Mile area to Melrose to Pico, there's real malaise business-wise, and we have to drive business back to the district.
Do you have some rapport with the Korean American community other than knowing Ben Pep?
Yeah, so I'm an LA guy, grew up here, so I have so many Korean friends growing up over the years. I think the Iranian community and the Korean American community, I'm also Jewish, so I think
are you? Okay.
The Jewish community and the Korean American community have so much in common, our love of family, tradition, immigrants, and some of us refugees, entrepreneurial, business-minded, loving the city, and just we've all lived the American dream in different ways, right? And trying to continue to do that, and we're worried about this future for our kids, and I think we're not ideological. We can believe in some common sense and want to turn the city around, and that's why I'm running to do that. And I'm proud to have a lot of support from friends in the community who are Korean American, and I'm working really hard to take advantage of this historic opportunity because there's this increase of the district going more east and including Wilshire Park and Park La Brea and Hancock Park, and right next to Koreatown, there's opportunity to give voice to the Korean American community. I want to have multiple staff members from my team who are from the community, not just to be field representatives, but policy advisors and in key positions. That's going to be important for me. So I'm looking forward to finding the top quality candidates. I want to have a really strong, diverse staff. I think having Korean Americans on my staff will be incredibly important and valuable. And I'm working hard to make sure that I can be a voice. You never know when the next redistricting happens or next political fight. To have someone who is going to be a champion for the Korean American community is going to be incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Your faith is Judaism?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any last words you want to say to our viewers and readers?
Just that we're all very concerned about Los Angeles.
Please tell your website. And
of course.
Advertise as much as you want.
Yeah, so again, my name is Sam Yebri. I'm running for Los Angeles City Council. And the city that we love, that's enabled us to live the American dream, is in decline. And this election, June 7th, is the chance for all of us, all of our families, to raise our voices and to fight for a city that's safer and more vibrant. This chance only comes once every 4 years. And we have a ballot in our mailbox. I urge you to get engaged and to turn it in before June 7th. And I'm going to be the candidate who's going to be fighting for safer neighborhoods, helping small businesses, helping people who are homeless get the mental health and addiction services that they need, and getting them into shelter faster so our parks and our streets and our libraries can be clean and safe. So June 7th, make sure you vote, and you can learn more about me at sam4la.com.
And your endorsements, a couple of powerful.
Yeah, I have some very powerful
endorsements.
Yeah, so I have a broad coalition. I'm the only candidate in this race really who can say that they have progressives like Holly Mitchell and Congressman Henry Waxman, moderates like Councilmember Joe Buscaino and Kern Price. The LA City firefighters have endorsed me because of my focus on making sure they have the resources to fight fires and to deal with our overdoses on our streets and mental illness. And the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, BizFed, Central Cities Association, California Restaurant Association, every small business organization in Los Angeles has endorsed me, and I look forward to earning your vote on June 7th.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Thank you.
Okay.